The penthouse overlooked the harbor at sunset. I stood there watching the light turn the water gold, holding a leather journal that felt heavier than it should. Inside were numbers that made my stomach turn. My name is Iris Marlowe. I built a logistics empire from nothing. A dock worker's daughter who slept in her car during startup years, worked 3 jobs, put myself through night school. Everything I did was for one reason, so my children would never know that kind of struggle. Tonight, I understood I'd accomplished something worse. I'd created 3 versions of ingratitude. The journal in my hands was my bookkeeper's meticulous work, every cent given to each child in the last 5 years. Marcus, 34 years old, $847,000. MBA from a prestigious school. Apartment down payment in Manhattan. His wedding. His failed venture that he called learning investments. I paid for it all. He called once a month. During those calls, he talked about his deals, his promotions, his acquisitions. He never asked how I was. Not once. Priya, 31 years old, $623,000. Design degree. Fashion brand launch that collapsed. Jewelry collections. Spa retreats she posted about on social media. Home renovations. I paid for it all. She texted me emoji reactions to my life updates. Owen, 28 years old, $89,000. He'd rejected everything else. He was a social worker earning barely $35,000 a year in a nonprofit serving undocumented immigrants. He lived in a shared house in a neighborhood gentrification hadn't reached yet. Last week, he showed up unannounced to fix my kitchen faucet, not because I asked, but because he'd noticed I mentioned it was broken during a phone call I didn't think he was listening to. I had given 2 children everything. One had built a portfolio of possessions and resentments. One had built a life around the people no one else wanted to help. That night, I made a decision that terrified me. I would find out what my children actually valued. Not what they said they valued. What they actually chose when there was nothing in it for them. I would disappear, not completely, but I would disappear from their understanding of who I was. And I would knock on their doors asking for help. Act 2. The test. My lawyer Thomas sat across from me in my office and said the word I knew he'd say. No. Hear me out. Iris, you're 60 years old. You're a woman traveling alone. You're planning to sleep in unfamiliar places with no support. What if something actually happens to you? Then you'll know something actually happened, I said. And you'll come find me. He tried for another hour. I let him. But we both knew he'd help me anyway. We'd been friends for 30 years. He knew when I'd made a decision. So he arranged everything. A prepaid card with modest funds, a GPS tracker hidden in a burner phone, a car waiting 2 blocks away at all times. He made me promise I'd call if anything felt genuinely dangerous. I promised. I meant it. I also meant what I was about to do. I spent 2 weeks preparing. I sold my jewelry except one piece. A pen my mother left me. Too sentimental to sell, too simple to mark me as wealthy. I bought clothes from thrift stores that smelled like other people's closets. I paid cash, so there'd be no credit card trail. I had my hair cut badly by someone in a salon that didn't take appointments. I stopped wearing makeup. I wore my exhaustion like a costume, which was easy because I was genuinely exhausted. My assistant noticed something was wrong. She asked if I was going through something. Yes, I said. But I need to go through it alone. On a Monday morning in April, I walked out of my penthouse with one backpack and took the subway to a neighborhood I'd never been to. A place where my children would never think to look. Marcus's door. Marcus's townhouse was in a neighborhood where landscaping costs more than most people's annual salary. The gates were electronic. The driveway was perfectly paved. I'd helped him put the down payment on this place. I pressed the intercom. A woman's voice answered, his housekeeper. I asked for Marcus. She asked who it was. His mother, I said. There was a pause. Then she said something in Spanish to someone in the background. A few minutes later, Marcus came to the gate himself. He was wearing a tailored suit and was clearly on his way somewhere important. His expression when he saw me cycled through 4 emotions in sequence: confusion, Irritation, embarrassment, and then something calculated. His business face, the one he used to decide if a deal was worth his time. It took me less than a second to understand I wasn't worth his time. Mother, what are you doing here? Where's your car? I told him the story I'd prepared, but I watched his eyes while I told it. He wasn't listening. He was calculating. How long would this take? Could he solve it quickly? What was his minimum viable response? I've had a financial reversal, I said. I need a place to stay for a few days while I figure out my next moves. This isn't a good time, he said immediately. I have a client dinner in 40 minutes. And honestly, Mom, this seems like something you should handle with your lawyer, not show up at my house looking. He gestured at my clothes, the gesture small and dismissive. Like that. It will only be a few days, I said. He shook his head. I can't. The house is being prepared for a gala next weekend. The caterers will be here constantly. The renovators just finished the master bathroom. It's actually the worst possible time. Plus, I have a partners meeting tomorrow. I need to be sharp. I can't be dealing with a family crisis. He said it like I was a family crisis. Not a person. Not his mother. A problem with a deadline he didn't have time for. Marcus. How much do you need? He was already taking out his phone. 20,000? 50? I'll wire it today. Stay at a hotel. Get yourself sorted. We can talk when things aren't so chaotic on my end. He was solving the problem the only way he knew how, with money. I watched him transfer $50,000 to my account like he was paying a bill. He showed me the notification to prove he'd done it. Proof of transaction. Proof of care, by his definition. There, he said. Problem solved. I really do need to go. He closed the gate without waiting for me to respond. I stood outside holding $50,000 and feeling like I'd been handed an invoice. Priya's door. Priya's house was newer, the kind of place that looked like it was designed by someone who'd never actually lived in a house. Sharp angles. Minimalist furniture. Everything Instagram ready. She answered the door in expensive yoga clothes mid-text and immediately took a step back like my proximity was contagious. Oh my God, Mom. What happened to you? Hello, sweetheart. I'm sorry to show up without calling first. I'm in a difficult situation, and I was hoping. Okay, so this is actually crazy, because I'm literally leaving for the airport in 2 hours. She was already checking her phone, already mentally elsewhere. I'm going on this meditation retreat in Costa Rica. It's 2 weeks. I've been planning it for literally 6 months. It's supposed to be transformative. They do these private ceremonies and... How long will you be gone? I asked. 14 days. But anyway, you look rough. What's happening? Are you sick? Is this a health thing? I've had a financial emergency. I need money. Relief washed over her face because money was solvable. How much? Because honestly, my accounts are tied up in some investment stuff and the retreat is non-refundable, but I could probably... She was already calculating, her fingers moving across her phone's calculator app. 15,000? I can definitely do 15. That's not. 15 is solid. I'll transfer it right now. She was already doing it, already moving me from problem to solved, already thinking about her yoga mat and her spiritual journey, and her 2 weeks away from her actual life. I don't need money, I said. I need a place to sleep. She actually laughed. Like I'd made a joke. Like that was absurd. Mom, I can't. The whole house is being painted. The contractors are here at 7 a.m. The guest room is completely covered in tarps. There's literally nowhere you could sleep even if I said yes. Which was technically true and completely irrelevant. The living room? I suggested. There's painting tape everywhere. And the fumes are... She stopped, seeing something in my face. For 1 second, I thought she might actually see me. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her expression shifted back. Look, I'm sorry. I'm being a bad daughter. But this retreat is important. It's for me, you know? Self-care. And you're such a strong person, Mom. You'll figure this out. You always do. She hugged me at the door, but was already mentally on the plane. I could feel her body already leaving. She paid me the compliment of strength like it was permission to abandon me. Take the money, she said. Get a hotel. Treat yourself. You look like you need to be taken care of. She closed the door, and I watched through the window as she returned to packing, her retreat already more real to her than her mother at her doorstep. I had $65,000 in transfers and no one to take me in. Owen's door. Owen's house was in a neighborhood the city hadn't yet decided was valuable. The paint was chipped. The fence had a board that was leaning more than standing. There was a bicycle on the porch that had been there so long the tires were flat. I stood outside for a long time before knocking. When Owen opened the door, he was holding a plate of rice and beans, eating standing up like he'd grabbed food while doing something else. He looked tired. He looked happy. He looked at me and his entire face changed. Mom? What's wrong? Are you okay? He was already stepping back, already creating space for me to enter, already conducting a visual assessment. Does she need a hospital? Is she hurt? What's wrong? I'm sorry to just show up. Come in. Come in right now. He set down his plate without finishing it. What happened? Tell me everything. His house was warm and disorganized. Two of his housemates were in the living room watching a documentary about climate change. There were dishes in the sink. There was a plant in the corner that was clearly dying, but someone was trying to save it. There was a note taped to the pot that said, "Water me Tuesday/Friday, Alex." There was a painting on the wall that looked like it was made by a child, but it was displayed like it was valuable. Because in this house, things were valuable if they represented care, not cost. Sit down. Tell me everything, Owen said. I told him the story. Financial reversal. Complicated situation. Needed temporary shelter. Needed to figure things out. Owen listened without checking his phone. When I finished, he didn't calculate or problem solve or offer to make it go away with money. He said, "You're staying here. Come on. Let me show you where." He took my arm and led me downstairs to a basement room that was being used for overflow guests. It was small. It was clean. It had a single bed with blue sheets that looked freshly washed. There was a lamp that cast a warm glow. It was possibly the most beautiful room I'd ever seen because someone had made it ready, not for a specific person, but for whoever needed it. The shower sometimes runs cold, Owen said, but if you let it run for 30 seconds, evens out. There's a small fridge under the desk. The towels are clean. And we have a pretty loose meal schedule. We usually eat together around 6, but just help yourself to whatever's in the kitchen. A lot of people come and go, so it's never formal. Owen, I don't have much money right now, I said carefully. That's okay, he said. Like it actually was. Like that was the least important thing about what was happening. We figure out. You might not be able to afford. Mom. He sat next to me on the bed. You raised me. You loved me even when I chose a path you didn't understand. You're here now. That's the only thing that matters. He left me alone to settle in, closing the door softly. I lay on the bed with my mother's pendant in my hand and cried the way you cry when you finally understand what you've been missing your entire life. Act 3. The Doubt. I spent 4 days in Owen's house. On the first day, I helped him organize the kitchen, and I understood that he'd been letting it get disorganized because he was too busy helping other people. On the second day, I worked with his housemate James to care for the garden, and I understood that even when things grew slowly, Owen's people kept trying. On the third day, I made dinner for the whole house, a simple pasta with vegetables from their own garden, and I understood that feeding people was an act of love, not obligation. On the fourth night, I was in the kitchen putting away dishes when Owen and James started talking in the living room, not knowing I could hear them. Your mom is going through something, James said. I know, Owen replied. I want to help her, but I'm already working weekends sometimes. My salary barely covers rent, and if she needs to stay longer. We could check if the Emergency Assistance Fund has anything. Maybe. I don't want to. I hate asking for help.
Owen.
She's your mom. You're allowed to need her sometimes, too. There was silence. Then, yeah. I know. I froze. My hand still on a wet plate. For the first time, doubt crept in. What was I really doing? Owen was sacrificing. actually sacrificing his comfort, his financial security, for a mother he didn't know was testing him. Was this test even fair? Or was I just a rich woman playing games with the real struggles of people who had nothing? I sat on the basement bed that night, unable to sleep, feeling the full weight of what I'd set in motion. Marcus and Priya had failed the test. But had they really failed because they were bad people? Or had I, through years of giving them everything, made them believe that money was the only language of love? And if so, wasn't some of the blame mine? Owen had passed, but at what cost? He was already exhausted, already sacrificing, and I was adding to his burden, even if he didn't know it. For the first time since I'd started this test, I questioned whether I had the right to do it. The next morning, I almost called Thomas and told him to cancel everything. Instead, I made coffee. Owen came down and found me sitting at the small kitchen table, holding a cup with both hands like I was cold. "You okay?" he asked, sitting across from me. "No," I said. It was the first honest thing I'd said to him. "I'm not okay." "Do you want to talk about it?" I almost told him then. I almost confessed the entire thing. The ledger. The test. The lawyer waiting 2 blocks away. All of it. But I didn't. Because I realized something. If I told him now, it would negate everything. He would feel manipulated. The sacrifice he was making, the sacrifice his girlfriend James mentioned, would become a performance I'd orchestrated. And the one genuine thing in my life, my youngest son's unconditional love, would be tainted by the knowledge that it was part of a test. So instead, I lied one more time. "I'm just scared," I said. "I don't know how to move forward from here." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. And in that moment, I knew I had to go through with it. Not because I wanted revenge on Marcus and Priya, but because my children needed to know that the way they loved or didn't love had consequences. That being born into wealth didn't exempt them from basic human decency. That being my children didn't guarantee their inheritance. Act 4. The Revelation. The next morning, Thomas called the burner phone. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Call them," I said. "Tell them there's a meeting. Tell them to come here at 4 o'clock. Iris, once you do this, you can't undo it. These are your children." "I know," I said. "That's why it has to be real." Owen came home early from work. When he saw Thomas, when he saw the documents, he put the pieces together in one breath. "You're not actually bankrupt," he said. "No." This was a test. Yes. Why? I told him about the ledger, about Marcus and his wire transfer, about Priya and her meditation retreat, about the difference between what my children said they valued and what they actually chose when money wasn't on the table. Owen sat with this for a long time. "They're going to be angry," he said finally. "Probably. You're telling them you were testing them." "Yes." "Did they pass?" he asked, but he already knew the answer. "No," I said. "But that's not why I'm doing this anymore." "What do you mean?" I said slowly, that I came here with a lot of anger. I wanted to prove they were ungrateful. I wanted to show them they'd failed. But Owen, spending these days with you, watching you sacrifice when you have nothing to spare, I realized something. What? That I created them. Marcus's coldness, Priya's avoidance, I taught them that. I gave them everything but never taught them that some things can't be bought. And I'm angry at them for lessons I taught them. Owen's expression shifted. He saw something in me that he hadn't seen before. "So, what are you going to do?" he asked. "The truth. I'm going to tell them the truth. And then, I'm going to give them a choice." When Marcus arrived at 4 o'clock, he was annoyed about being taken away from work. When Priya arrived at 4:15 late, because of course she was already making excuses about her schedule. I was still wearing Owen's borrowed sweater. They saw the lawyer. They saw the documents. They processed their brother sitting calmly on the sofa. "What is this?" Marcus demanded. I explained the test without softening it. I showed them the ledger. I told them what they'd each chosen. I didn't tell them what it meant. I let them figure that out themselves. Marcus's face went through colors. Priya started crying immediately. "I didn't know it was really you," Priya said. "Mom, if I had known." That's the entire point, I said. You didn't know. And your answer was still no. Because I had a commitment. You've broken commitments for me before. When I needed you, this time you kept a commitment to yourself instead. Marcus was angry. This is a trap. You manipulated us. I created a situation where you had to choose, I said. You could have chosen differently. With what? Your money that you've been controlling us with our entire lives. There was truth in his anger. Yes, I said. I've used money to control you. I've given you everything except the one thing you actually needed. A mother who loved you enough to see you clearly, and to be seen clearly by you. Owen spoke quietly. She didn't come to us because she was out of money. She came because she needed to know if we were actually family or just people bound by genetics and inheritance. And apparently we failed, Marcus said bitterly. You made choices, I said. Your instincts were your answers. And I want you to hear the most important thing. I'm not as angry as I thought I'd be, because I understand now that you learned what I taught you. The anger I feel is partly toward myself. The room went very quiet. The reckoning. I didn't write them out of the will that day. Instead, I created conditions. With Thomas drafting the documents, I established that Marcus and Priya could remain in my will, but only if they met specific requirements over the next 2 years. First, therapy. Monthly family sessions with a therapist specializing in inheritance psychology and family dynamics. No exceptions. No rescheduling. Second, service. 10 hours a week for the first 6 months, then ongoing, working directly with people in genuine need. Not charitable board positions. Not photo ops. Direct service. Hands-on. Seeing faces, learning names, understanding that people exist outside of their economic utility. Third, presence. Monthly dinners with me. Genuine conversations where we discuss real things. Not transactions. Not obligations. Real presence. If I sense you're just performing for the inheritance, this condition fails. Fourth, reflection. A written reflection where you articulate what you learned about yourself from this experience. Not apologies. Not excuses. Understanding. If at any point you clearly demonstrate that you're only doing this for the inheritance, the provisions will be removed, I explained. Everything goes to Owen and his organization. Your mother's presence in your life is conditional now. That's new. I understand why that's terrifying. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my face stopped him. Priya asked, "What if we fail?" "Then you fail," I said. "And you'll have to live with what that means." I paused, looking at both of them. "But I want you to know something," I continued. "If you genuinely try, not for the money, but because you want to become better people, I will be there. I will help you. Because you're my children, and I love you even when I'm disappointed in you. That doesn't change." Marcus looked up. For the first time, I saw something real in his face. Not the business calculation. Not the dismissal. Actual pain. "I don't know if I can change," he said quietly. "None of us do," I replied. "We only know that we can try." Aftermath. I moved out of Owen's basement room 3 weeks later. Not because I had to. Because he insisted. He helped me find a small apartment 2 blocks away, close enough to be present but far enough to maintain independence. With Thomas's help, I restructured my business to require less of my daily attention. I'd spent 28 years building an empire. I'd barely given 2 years of real attention to the people who should have mattered most. Marcus showed up to the first therapy session. So did Priya. We sat in a small office with Dr. Rachel, who had the kind of calm that made you want to tell her the truth whether you intended to or not. It was painful. But pain, I was learning, was sometimes the only honest thing. During the 3rd session, Marcus said something that surprised me. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told me. "That I learned this from you. And I realized. I became you. Not the good parts. Not the sacrificing, working hard parts. I became the cold part. The part that uses money to solve problems instead of actually being present." He looked at me directly. "I don't want to be that anymore." It wasn't redemption. It was the beginning of redemption. And that was enough. Final scene. 1 year later, on a Tuesday evening, I sat in my small apartment and received a text from Marcus. It was a photo. Him and Priya at a community kitchen, both of them wearing aprons, both of them laughing while plating food for a dinner they were serving to homeless people. No caption. Just the image. I cried looking at it. Not because they were suddenly perfect. Not because the damage was repaired. But because they were trying. Because they were choosing, slowly and sometimes painfully, to become people I could respect. Owen called that night. "Mom, I saw Marcus's Instagram story," he said. "He's actually doing the work." "He is," I said. "Does that change things?" "The inheritance." "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Ask me in a year." "Will you go back to them? Now that they're trying?" I thought about that question for a long time. "No," I said finally. "I won't go back. But I'll go forward. And that's different."